Welcome to the second class for the Real in-Home presentation training. My name's Miranda Martin, and I've got John Ziller here, and we're going to be covering the E, which really stands for emotion, and we're going to figure out why our clients that we're sitting with need the coverage, and what would happen if, God forbid, one of them were to pass away.
Ziller, I'm on the phone.
So the E stands for emotion. And basically, this is the most important part of the in-home presentation, because what happens is we have to first get emotional with our clients if we're going to expect them to get emotional.
Yes, absolutely, Miranda. Couldn't have said it any better. And really just kind of understanding what this does is it really does lay the foundation of the entire presentation. So you have to kind of like keep in mind is that you are the stimulus that creates the response. And so I want you to think about this as like, your why. The bigger your why is, the easier it's going to be to get a bigger why out of them. And like it says here, the definition of a sale is it is a transfer of emotion, whether the emotion would be good or bad. And so as you're coming up with your stories, it doesn't matter whether it's a good story or a bad story. It just matters is that we're kind of starting to drum up their emotion. And throughout your why, you need to kind of paint the picture of your why to the best of your ability, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. I am all about kind of just transition statements, transition questions, and so what you're going to do is transitioning into your why. You're just going to just very simply put, let me tell you why I'm in this business. Okay, so I'd recommend just writing that down. Let me tell you why I'm in this business. Write out your story and then just end it with, so tell me, why are you guys looking into this type of protection? What would it mean for your family? And we have this kind of written out here in just a second. But a good story versus a bad story. A good story is going to have detail. It's going to be relatable. You're going to use specific dates. You're going to use specific timelines. As it also says here, just don't use vague words. A lot of people will say, well, you know what, because of my mom passing away, we went through financial hardship. Well, instead of just saying financial hardship, I really want you to kind of explain what that financial hardship looked like. Well, you know what, we used to go out to dinner on every Friday night would be pizza night, and then that really started to kind of look like ramen noodle night, right? Or, you know, we used to go out and do these fun things, or every summer we would take a big vacation. We weren't able to do that. You know, we started using hand-me-down clothes. You just really want to explain what that financial hardship would look like instead of just saying financial hardship. You must have emotion in your story to have the client start thinking about the emotion in theirs. And so I'm going to give you just a kind of the difference between what a good why would look like and then kind of what a bad why would look like. So kind of consider this A and B. And so I'm just going to start them off both the same. And so when I'm talking about my why, meaning your why, is in the agent's why, here would be a bad version. Okay, let me tell you why I'm in this business. I got into this because my father, he had got diagnosed with cancer, and he was out of work for 8 to 10 months. And being out of work, our family went through, you know, financial hardship. And because of that, they ended up losing their house. Number one reason for divorce, they got divorced. So I got into this just to make sure that not another family has to go through what my family went through. So tell me, why are you guys looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? Well, that would be a bad why. Why? Because I didn't feel emotionally connected to the story, number one. Number two, I used kind of that vague word like financial hardship. Number three, I wasn't connected to it by any stretch of the imagination. You want to make sure that there is feeling behind this, okay? And so I really want you to hear kind of the different version, the way that this is supposed to be. Not just kind of that one paragraph explanation, but really just kind of digging into the details of what this is supposed to look like. All right, so that was the bad version. Here's the good version. So here would be a good why. So let me tell you why I'm in this business. I got into this because of back in 2003, my father had gotten diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And being diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, my father had to go through really heavy doses of radiation and chemo. And going through those heavy doses of radiation and chemo, it put him out of work for 9.5, almost 10 months. Well, the thing is that I have 5 brothers and sisters, and so my mom was doing a very good job at managing the household. She just didn't bring in an income. So with my father being out of work for almost 10 months, there was no money coming in. My parents couldn't support that big of a family off of no income for that long. And so you started kind of watching cars get ripped out of the driveway from tow truck drivers. We didn't really know that they were repo men at the time. Started noticing that the refrigerator just got kind of completely emptied out more often than not. You'd notice that they were arguing a lot more, even while my father's kind of fighting for his life because there was no money. My father ended up going through remission, getting into remission. And the crazy part is like during that whole time, he spent more time up in the bedroom than he did downstairs the family. He started losing a bunch of weight, lost all of his hair. I mean, it just got really bad really quick. When my father got through remission, he got back to work. He had to immediately get back to work after the great news. And it was almost a day late and a dollar short. My parents ended up losing that house. They had to short sell it off. Number one reason for all divorces is finances. So my parents ended up getting a divorce. A couple of kids went live with my mom. A couple of kids went live with my dad. And my brother and I, we would always cross paths like, what could we do to bring our family back together? And my brother had actually found that had my father had a particular policy put in place just for being diagnosed with cancer, he could have received a pretty sizable check that maybe my family wouldn't be broken today. So tell me, why are you guys looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? All right, and so that would be the better version of why. There's a lot more details. There's a lot more emotion. There's a connection there, right? There's relatability. People have watched their refrigerators completely deplete out. Maybe some people have had a tow truck driver come and a repo man come and rip their car out. There's just very vivid and kind of painting that picture, walking through that story of exactly kind of just what happened there. And so, again, that would be good versus kind of a bad story, and you get in the picture of both. Now, a lot of people can come in here and say, you know what, I don't have anything like that. I don't have anything where my father had gotten diagnosed with cancer. I don't have any bad stories. In fact, the only story that I have is my grandmother passed away, and with my grandfather passed away. And with my grandfather passed away, he actually had life insurance, he had mortgage protection, he had everything under the sun where my grandmother was set up. Right? And so I really want you to think about a story like that too. And I'm just going to really quickly kind of explain how you can turn a story like that into still that relatable story. Okay? And so just running through this pretty quick, I would say something to the extent of, man, let me tell you why I'm in this business. I got into this because of my grandmother and my grandfather. I want the same outcome that happened in this particular scenario. So my grandfather would always kind of tell everyone how he was worth more dead than he was alive, right? And so my grandfather passed away in July of 2016. And my grandmother's life had changed from a financial perspective a lot better. And because my grandparents were living off of Social Security. And so my grandmother, for the first time in her life, was 100% debt-free. House paid for, everything paid for, cars paid for, you name it, all taken care of. And I would drive past my grandmother's house every single day for almost a year after my grandfather's passing. And finally I pulled up. My wife was out of town and went and walked right into my grandmother's house. She said, "Oh, Johnny, how are you?" Invited me in. She asked me if I was hungry. I had a bowl of chili. We were sitting there talking, and you know, I'd been wanting to ask my grandmother something for a very long time. And finally had the opportunity to be able to do it. I'll never forget this moment. I looked over to my grandmother. She had a bowl of chili in her, and she was midway between her bowl of chili to her mouth with her spoon full of chili. And I said, "Grandma, can I ask you a question?" She said, "Sure, sweetie, go ahead." I said, if God forbid Grandpa didn't have that type of coverage, what would your life look like right now? And my grandmother immediately started crying. She excused herself from the table. I felt horrible. She finally returned. And she apologized, and I said, "No, my gosh, I'm so sorry." And she goes, You know, she goes, I thank God every day that that man didn't have a selfish bone in his body. You know, because when he passed away, we had $37 left in our checking account. We always just lived from Social Security check to Social Security check. We had credit card debt. We didn't want our kids going without. So anytime the kids needed anything or the grandkids needed anything, we would just give them everything that we possibly could. And so if your grandfather didn't have this particular type of coverage put in place, I would have lost the house. I would have lost the cars. I would have filed bankruptcy at 77 years old because I wouldn't want to take one red cent away from my children or my grandchildren. I would have had to bounce from child to child to child until they got sick of me. I would have been the 77-year-old woman at Walmart working there because I need a paycheck because nobody else is going to hire me. And so I'm going to stop, but I'm giving you the idea here, right? The idea of that story is to show you what her life would have looked like if she didn't have that particular coverage put in place. And so there is a story for everything. And when we have you guys write out your why, we want you to think about absolutely everything under the sun. Okay.
So really, what's going to be your assignment from this class is to write out your why and take into consideration the stuff we have on the screen here, like details, specific time frames, and just like John showed, let's talk about the details of what it would look like in a bad situation. So like he said before, if there was a bad situation, you just peel back the onion on what that looked like. And if it was a positive situation, you can take that flip side and still say, what if you didn't have that coverage? What would happen here? So you're going to actually write your why out and you're going to send it to your upline because we're going to help you with this, because you guys having this story, you know, the right way is automatically going to have that client reciprocate that emotion back. And that's the next part of this training.
And so we get here into the transition. Now, I love this transition question. You heard me use it after every single version of a why that I gave. And it's, so tell me, why are you looking into this type of protection? What would this mean to your family? Now, really quick, you're going to notice here how this type is in big, bold letters, okay? Because what we want them to do with that particular question is we want them to compartmentalize the difference between life insurance and mortgage protection. Right? People have car insurance, they have property and casualty. I mean, so there are so many different types of protection that we want them to compartmentalize the difference between life insurance and mortgage protection. So, great question. This is also a temperature check, guys, too, okay? So after you ask them that question and they give you a very non-emotional response, that means that your why didn't impact them. Okay, so if you go, so tell me, why are you looking into this type of protection? What would this mean to your family? And they say something like, I don't know, I got a bunch of these in the mail and I just filled one out. Okay, that's a non-emotional response. Or if they say, well, I just wanted to see how much it costs. That's a very non-emotional response. I want you to kind of pay attention to this over the next couple of weeks. Or if they start, and you'll notice that when your why makes an impact, meaning you as the agent and you're really kind of telling a good story, you're going to watch them kind of have diarrhea of the mouth. And they're going to start telling you, oh my gosh, you know what? We're looking into this because my brother-in-law, his best friend, he passed away. And they're going to come up with all kinds of crazy stories, really telling you why they need this particular type of protection. So it's a great temperature check question right here, okay? To give you guys an indication whether your why is making an impact or not. All right, so with their why, this is really going to go into three different phases, all right? And the three different phases, this is going to be phase one, which you can see right here. I love this thing that Miranda has here. And you're going to ask as many who, what, when, where, why, and how as you possibly can. What these are called is these are called actually open-ended questions. And she already has a bunch of examples here for you. Who would get the house? Who would it affect, right? Kids, partner, family. How would you feel? How you could afford whatever the adjustments are. And so she's got kind of a bunch of it laid out. So just in this very first phase is, I always like that you're already asking an open-ended question there in the transition. So tell me, why are you guys looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? And then another very good question, as you can see at the very top, would be, okay, John, if you didn't come home yesterday, how would the situation play out for your family as it stands today? Okay, and you can see that right at the top there. I want you guys asking those two questions back to back. All right, back to back. So tell me, why are you looking into this type of protection? What would it mean to your family? And then always, no matter how they respond, no matter what they say, just, all right, John, so tell me, if you didn't come home yesterday, how would the situation play out for your family as it stands today? And they're going to tell you all kinds of stuff here. And that'll give you the ability to really just start thinking of all of the different things that Miranda has here.
And one of the things that you want to keep in mind is you want to try to go 7 layers deep with your questions. So like, for example, who would get the house? My brother. Wow, how would he pay for it? You know, what would he do with his house? You know, where would he go? How long would it take him to move over here? Because what we find is when you go from level 3 through 7, now you start going from the head to the heart. Okay?
That's good. And you know what, just another thing too on this particular topic, that if they have children, really start to kind of think about that too, is like, okay, so would you be able to stay here? Well, no, we wouldn't. All right, where would you have to move to? Well, we'd have to move to a much more affordable area. Okay, how do you think that would impact the children? Well, oh my gosh, you know, I didn't even think about that, because now I'm going to have to move to a new school district. All right, so, right, we're moving them away from their friends that they're going to need. We're moving them away from their home, kind of their safety net. There's a lot of pretty big changes. So how do you think they would be affected by that? And so many, just as Miranda just said, just being able to go as many layers deep as you possibly can, and really taking notes, okay? And we're going to talk.
One thing that I get asked all the time is, well, what do I do if I'm sitting with a single person? Guess what? The single person invited you over because they care about protecting their home for someone. It could be their kids, it could be a brother or sister, it could be a significant other, whatever the case may be, they're doing it for someone. So I think you just want to keep that in mind, that if they died, something's still going to need to happen with their home.
Yes, that is absolutely a great point, Murph. All right, and so just like we said here, number 1, ask as many who, what, when, where, why, and how as you possibly can. And so these are 3 different phases, okay? So there's phase number 1 that we've already talked about. At the end of that, after you went 7 layers deep, like Miranda said, and don't just stop at 7 layers, go as deep as you possibly can, okay? But at the end of that phase, what we want you to do is just ask them a simple question. If you had to draw up an ideal situation for your family, what would that look like? That's a great kind of question for them to really say, you know what, I don't want my family to go through anything of what we just talked about. I really want them to be protected. I don't want my wife to have to worry about college tuition, buying a car, doing anything. Like, I want my wife to be completely set, right? Or vice versa. Awesome, perfect. Okay, now really quick, as you're asking the who, what, when, where, why, and how, guys, you have to be taking notes. It's so critical that we're taking notes. So what you're going to do is you're going to actually have a blank piece of paper and a pen in front of you. And every question that you ask, I don't care how they respond, you're going to write as fast as you possibly can. You take notes, write down exactly what they're saying. You're going to find that it's very important, because what we're going to do here is we're going to recap. Okay, now the recap is extremely important. In the very beginning, I kind of talked about people buy because they like you, trust you, and understand how you are going to impact their family. Well, you're getting them to like you through your story. You're getting them to start to trust you because they're opening up. This recap right here is the understanding. They are going to understand that you understand how their situation is going to play out and how you can help them. So make sure that you recap. And the recap is going to be something along the lines of, okay, guys, let me just make sure I have this right. And then basically read off everything that on your piece of paper out loud to them so they can hear it. Okay, and then after you've kind of gotten that recap down, you got them to kind of agree that, yeah, that's exactly how it would play out. Then all we need to do is just get the commitment. Confirm that they need the coverage by simply asking the question. And the question is very simple, is would you agree wholeheartedly, undeniably, that we need this particular type of protection?
Yep, so just to recap, after we get the who, what, when, where, how, you're going to say, guys, if we could draw up an ideal situation, tell me what the ideal situation would look like. Take notes, take notes. Then you repeat it back. Wow, let me just make sure we're on the same page here, John. Blank, 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 blank. So would you agree, John, that everything we just talked about, that you need the whole mortgage paid off, or you need 1 year of mortgage payments, whatever the case may be that you're going to be showing them, you have to get the commitment before you go ahead and show them a price. And if you don't have a good why, let's say for some strange reason they don't really think they need the coverage, you use your 911 string right now and say that there's no why. You do not move into showing them prices.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with that more.
Awesome, guys. So just in recap, your next assignment is going to be for you to go ahead and write your why out. And again, with detail, and we might need a few revisions, so don't get too stressed out about it. But really, again, we're just trying to drum up that emotion and then repeat back what the client had said and just determine if they need it. So guys, we'll look forward to seeing you at the next class, and thanks for joining.